What is the most effing useless thing that they teach in school? Bias credit. Left brain vs right brain. Not only is it not true, it just divided all the kids from smart kids to art kids. No need for that. Similar to how some teachers still teach that different parts of the tongue taste different tastes, even though that can be disproven just by eating something.
Character counts, it was our school's motto. The school also actively punished honesty and integrity when it mattered, and instead held award ceremonies for students who showed basic human decency, like, hey, you dropped this in the hallway, here you go. You would get awards for not being a piece of poo, but if you decide to show any real character, like stepping up for your friends when they are in trouble, you get detention. Let it be known, Erindale Secondary School in Ontario, Canada is a poo hole.
Character is what you do when nobody's looking, is what our coach used to say. Funny, because I don't remember any kids called character, but he apparently was doing someone's kid regularly. Off to jail he went, along with his character. In his mind, character almost always meant running through the halls when nobody was looking, which how is that even an issue? But effing children, well, that's just fine.
None. All that taught me was how to take care of an egg.
Step 1. Put it in the fridge.
Sure, but what about the egg?
We had those robot babies that would cry at random times and you'd have to coddle it to make it calm down. My friend took it home for a weekend and literally almost smashed it because she couldn't get it to stop crying. She decided after that she was not meant for motherhood.
None. That needs to chance. I'm sorry, but if someone is bullying my child on a day-to-day basis, my son has every right to take charge.
I was bullied all through middle school, and tried to be passive and ignore it. It only stopped after getting into a few fights. I didn't even win most of the fights, but it turns out most bullies don't actually like fights and don't like being punched. I'm glad my dad talked to me like an adult about it when it was clear the school wasn't able to do anything.
Zero tolerance policy is the dumbest thing ever taught and implemented. All it teaches is to fear authority when you're the victim. It enables the perpetrator, who is normally a bully. I know administrators are lazy FS, but they need to actually investigate the goddamn problem instead of saying, hey, you both were involved in the issue so you're both going to get punished. It basically just raises you to hate authority, and while I don't like authorities either, I don't think they are all distrustful. Although, I guess this could be interpreted as commentary on how garbage authority is.
It also escalates situations. You're getting the same punishment if you retaliate or not, so you better make sure they think twice before starting POO with you again.
I do not want to say this and strongly advocate against violence, but this unfortunately lead to such conclusion, indeed.
Hey, if I'm getting suspended either way, I might as well do something to deserve it.
If you're gonna do the time, you might as well do the crime.
And honestly, it's not worth it to half-ass it. Take it as far as you can. Really push the envelope.
It actually taught me something useful for the real world. You can't trust anyone with power over you. Nobody cares what happens to you, and if you don't want to live on your knees you have to fight. Damn the consequences.
I was bullied since elementary school. Just talk to them, tell the teacher, the parents. For 8 years I've tried this. It did jack poo. But one day I finally punched the poo out of a bully in high school. Guess what happened? I got punished and he didn't. Lol, at least he stopped bullying me. Laughing smiley.
There can be no justice under an absolute law.
I agree. What you got into a fight that wasn't started by you and you didn't antagonize the other person until they started the fight. Suspension for both of you. The way they told me about it too made my blood boil, because they said it like an ass too. Not a lesson, but they teach you to respect adults no matter what. That's how teachers get away with so much nonsense. It's how parents get away with abuse. Kids are taught to respect adults, but what they really teach them is don't do anything to inconvenience an adult. So a kid is more likely to keep their mouth shut if they're getting molested or beat. They need to teach instead that respect is earned and not to blindly trust people just because they have seniority or authority over you, that you have a right to make a judgment on somebody if they're doing something bad.
100% agree. This poo is what makes children think it's their fault when someone is treating them wrong, and it is so incredibly harmful.
DARE was the single worst effing useless thing ever taught at school. Especially when the cop teaching said class ends up getting arrested for coke.
The rhetoric got to the whole world through cartoons, and I thought that people would be offering me free D all the time. I'm 32 and I've only smoked a joint once, recently, shared by a friend that's a teacher.
I heard that DARE ended up having more people get into D instead of keep them away from it.
Buys DARE shirt only to smoke in later.
I like how they force you to make a DARE promise to pass and exit the program. It's like, what do you think is gonna happen? I'm not gonna feel ashamed because you forced a 5th grader to promise never to smoke, drink, or do D. That's the definition of indoctrination, and I raise a cold one for the DARE officers, cause I know that they are smokers and alcoholics anyways.
That sticking up for yourself is wrong. I punched a kid in the face because he was being physically abusive to me. He grabbed my arms and spun us in circles, intending to let go once I would be sort of thrown through the air. I got an arm loose and punched him in the face before that happened. Instead of him being expelled, I, a female half his size, was forced to apologize for defending myself. I'm still effing mad.
When I was a little girl, my dad always told me that as long as I didn't start the fight and only ever retaliated to physical violence, I would never be in trouble with him. When I was 11 and did end up in a physical fight with a boy, my dad told me after that he was proud of me for sticking up for myself. His opinion always meant the most to me.
That reminds me of the time when I was being bullied by some older guys in 3rd grade and I was just a small girl. Edit. I use he/him now BTW, they threw a basketball at my head once and so, having enough, I slapped one of them. Teacher claimed to not see the boys throwing 3 basketballs at my head and I got detention for the rest of the week.
Got tripped by some bullies in school and literally had my skull crack open on a steel and concrete pillar. It messed me up for life. They never got in trouble.
Jesus. This thread is simultaneously making me so angry at the complete lack of justice, and terrified to have kids in the school system someday.
Makes me practice in my head the 2-hour-long speech I would scream at the principal and dumbass teachers of that school, and I don't even have kids.
We had written finals in high school for PE. It was so ridiculous that even the PE teachers didn't really bother reading our answers while grading the exams. Another friend answered what is an aerobic exercise, with a drawing of a man doing push-ups in the presence of a chemistry set creating oxygen via hydrogen peroxide, and drew arrows to them labeling the reaction and the push-ups as aerobic and exercise respectively. Another friend answered a question about things to keep in mind when trying to eat a balanced diet for health, with points like try not to eat a brick wall. Only one of them failed. One of them had their final exam sheet framed. Edit, holy poo. This blew up. Just to be clear, I'm not saying knowing those things isn't important. Just that we had covered all of that in middle school as different subjects, except for the history of sports questions. So it was just something nobody cared about. Thanks for the awards, strangers. Edit 2, clarified high school.
I want to hope that it was the aerobic exercise that had failed. It'd be funny for the other 2 to pass, even though the aerobic exercise was probably the closest answer to being correct.
It actually was him that failed. Hard to get away with a diagram. The others just passed because nobody bothered to read the answers.
I can't imagine his reaction after that.
I suppose becoming a pay teacher is out of the question. That if someone's bullying you, you tell them that you don't like it. Like no poo, that's why they do it. Edit, holy moly, thanks for all the awards. I just started this account and this is the first comment that's blown up on my whole time in Reddit.
My grandmother used to tell my dad, my brothers, and me, if someone hits you, tell them you don't like to get hit. Most useless piece of advice that has been taught to society. Edit, fixed a typo.
My dad taught me to fight back if someone hit me, but to accept the punishment from the school. And you know what? People stop hitting you once they realize you punch back. Schools apparently punish more harshly and less justly on those grounds than they did in the past. Pretty sure I'll still tell my kid to put that other prick in the ground, but I'm sure it'll be more hassle than my parents dealt with.
Might be true, but as long as you know what you did was right and your parents have your back, school detention is not that much of a punishment. One important right lesson in life is that you often have to choose between several bad outcomes and sometimes get punished for doing the right thing.
The only thing that ever helped me with bullies at that age was fighting back. I tried everything else. But the teachers punished me more than the bullies for it. They'd always say it doesn't matter who started it, which is effing bullpoo. I'm still mad.
That line is the effing stupidest POO. I don't care who started it, teaches the bully two things: A, they can get their victim in trouble whenever they like, and B, the authority don't give a F.
I was waiting in the office for a counselor's appointment in 9th grade, and this kid that I didn't know decided to lay into me and make fun of absolutely everything about me. I wasn't making eye contact, I just kept shaking my head no and looking at all the office workers, who heard him, but ignored it and said nothing. As soon as I got into my counselor's office, I started sobbing. This kid had absolutely broken me. The counselor was visibly uncomfortable with me crying, and was like, "Do you want to talk to him? Let's get him in here and talk it out." None to which the counselor replied, "So you two can be buds after this?" I was like, "Yeah, let's let the bully know that his tactics have worked, and I'm even closer to killing myself now than ever, which is why I was going to the counselor's office in the first place." That. POO. Glad I never have to do high school again because I wouldn't make it out alive a second time. Edit, hello all you beautiful people. There's a couple things that I'd like to address here. First off, I am a 32-year-old woman, and I was 14 at the time. The guy that was making fun of me was at least 17, and easily 50 pounds heavier than me. I had zero chance. So while many people are saying, well, I would have XYZ. No, you wouldn't have. You'd have the same reaction as I did, no matter how brave you thought you would have been, or I should have been, at the time. To those of you who have gone through something similar, goddamn, that effing sucks, and I'm sorry you all went through it as well. It saddens me to know how common this experience is for so many, but I am happy that we have all lived through it. None.
I seriously don't get that. How can school staff legitimately think, hey, this kid's getting bullied? They would certainly make good friends. This plan couldn't F up in any way.
That counselor watches too many movies. No, it's the poo that they teach you in education classes. Everything is about positive reinforcement, and they really discourage teachers and staff from anything that might be seen as negative. Which is bullpoo. Kids are people, which means a certain number of them are DKS and a few are straight up evil. Is expelling a student an absolute pain in the ass? Yes. Is it the best thing for your school? Hell yes. The saying is, a few bad apples spoils the bunch for a reason.
Agreed.
So you two can be buds after this. Honestly, school administrators and guidance counselors can be so freaking naive about bullying. No, you're not going to be best friends with your bully because you opened up and told them how much it hurt you. The bully doesn't want to be your friend. He wants to feel superior to you by putting you down.
There's a website called Not Always Right. One story covered how the school planned to deal with bullying, and the parents were not amused at how naive these teachers were. Seriously, bullies are merciless pooids. That some teachers are this naive makes me wonder if they ever went to school or were a child.
I've seen some mental health professionals push for schools to start calling it peer abuse or something similar to really try and drive home the fact that's exactly what it is: abuse. Just because it's not an adult abusing a child, doesn't mean it can't leave lasting damage on a person to be trapped in an inescapable environment with people who torment you 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. I know plenty of people who've had lifelong psychological issues from being bullied, and often having it dismissed by the adults in their life when they mentioned it or asked for help.
Can you run a mile in 7 minutes? WTF no. LOL no 4.0 for you.
I had undiagnosed asthma as a youth and my coaches made me run a 7 minutes mile in Texas heat. I barely finished at time and had an asthmatic attack. My coaches literally laughed and pointed at me while I couldn't breathe, and still to this day I have an irrational hatred of female coaches. My male coaches were always super nice.
When I was in primary school we got taught about digital roots. It's where you take a number, add up all the digits and repeat if you have more than one digit. So 684 equals 6 plus 8 plus 4 equals 18 equals 1 plus 8 equals 9. Nobody else has ever heard of this.
It's useful for a rather niche video game, LOL.
What game?
999, 9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors. Amazing visual novel / puzzle game.
999, 9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors. It's an incredible game.
Digital roots are a great way to spot check arithmetic. For example, does 684 plus 333 equals 917? The answer is no, because the digital roots don't match. Digital root of 9 plus 99 not equal to 8.
Wait. What? How did I get through high school calculus, upper level uni math courses, and this is the first I've heard of this? Mind is blown.
Digital root is a fancy way of finding the remainder when you divide by 9, with the caveat of it equaling 9 when the remainder is 0. The same way you know 625 plus 413 isn't 1037 because the last digits don't match up, known as taking the result modulo 10. You can use the digital root to check your results modulo 9 and catch -89% of errors.
It's useful for determining if a number is divisible by 9. 684 is, because your answer was 9.
Divisible by 9. Why would you need to know if a number is divisible by 362,880?
Our elementary school was heavy into unicycles. Gym class year-round was learning to ride, then ride together, and in formation. I was one of the unlucky few who never got it. I can't dance or ride a bike either, so I suspect there's some balance issues. School all but threatened to hold me back a year until I learned how. Everyone forgot and never picked it up again as soon as they moved to middle school. Worst part is that we were a very poor school in a very rural area without much funding. I can't imagine how much the school spent on those unicycles. There was no sponsorship, and we weren't competing in anything. Edit. This was in a public school in western Washington state in the late 80s. But I think some other schools nearby did this too. None.
In my PAY class we learned Nordic pole walking, with a special emphasis on the technique. You know when you see old ladies walking with those ski poles, that was us at age 15. The kicker was that I went to an all-girls school, and they made us do laps around the neighbouring all-boys school with our poles. So not only was it useless but also humiliating. Edit. Thank you to those in the comments who reminded me it was Nordic pole walking. I'm not sure where I got nomadic from. Clearly I wasn't paying attention during that unit.
Did it keep the teen pregnancy rate down?
Yes, they had their own poles to keep themselves busy.
Imagine being such a lazy effing school administration that you greenlight walking but with sticks in your PE curriculum.
But didn't you hear? It's all about the technique. None as someone with terrible coordination, I will say that I got my ankles pinched more than once.
We did that, too. Not to brag too much, but I was good enough that they asked me and another kid to help teach the younger grades. Strangely enough, I don't seem to use it much in my day-to-day activities, like I'd hoped I would.
The idea of some small village where everyone rides around on unicycles and has no idea it's not normal feels like something out of a quirky RPG LMAO. Sorry you had to go through that, it must have been so Kafkaesque.
Would make sense in an isolated village. If there's no outside influence, then from one generation of teachers to the next, they'll misguidedly keep forcing each and every student to ride a one-wheeler. It's a dangerous cycle.
Noise.
I hated the unicycle mini-game in that town. So unintuitive, and they make you do it 3 times.
I bet the controls are all wonky where the turning is opposite because of the way you lean, and it feels like there's 2 seconds of input lag. Your school was definitely run by a clown.
I was going to say square dancing in 1st grade, but this is pretty bad.
Maybe a circus went out of business and they got them from a clown posse for cheap? JK.